This podcast is part of the SJ Network. Go to s-j-network.com for more great podcasts and for contact information on publicist Steve Joyner.
Hey, Dudley, did you know that Mickey Mouse was originally an alligator?
That's not correct, Henry. But his original name was Mortimer Mouse. If you like interesting stories, you should hear today's interview with Gary Arndt of the Everything Everywhere Daily podcast.
That sounds like a good idea. So I guess that I shouldn't listen to this podcast that says the Golden Gate Bridge is made out of Swiss cheese?
That sounds like a good idea. Besides, we all know that the only man-made structure made from Swiss cheese is the Sherpa Chalet.
Very true. Only because the plumbing didn't work with mozzarella. The more you know.
Attention, rebels of the Sherpalution. Today's podcast is being brought to you by Audible. You can get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/Sherpa. There are over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. And now Mr. Bruce will lead you into the Sherpa Chalet. As a reminder, throwing water balloons, or people, off the cliffs is strictly prohibited.
Welcome to Too Many Podcasts, the podcast about podcasts. Now, podcasting from the Sherpa Chalet on Mount Podcastia, here's your host, Jim, the podcast Sherpa.
Oh, there's that music again, and there's that podcaster again. Yes, you're back to Too Many Podcasts with me, Jim, the podcast Sherpa. Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to another week of another wonderful podcast, because I get to speak to another wonderful guest. And what about this guest? Who's our guest today, Sherpa?
Who's our guest today, Sherpa?
He is a world traveler. He is a award-winning blogger, an award-winning photographer. Okay, now you got to stop this. You're making the rest of us look bad. His name is Gary Arndt. He hosts a podcast called the Everything Everywhere Daily Podcast. And it's lots of trivia and little stories about things in this world that you may not have known about, and really interesting stuff, too. I stumbled across it, really enjoyed it. Unfortunately, with COVID, Gary is not doing the thing that he loves to do, which would be traveling, so I caught him at home, and we had a lovely little chat about traveling the world. The guy has been to all 7 continents. He's been to every state in the United States twice, and every province in Canada 3 times. Woo! That's a lot of mileage, folks. He's got a lot of stories and beautiful photographs to go along with it on his website. And we're going to talk about all that stuff in the interview. I think you're really going to like to hear what he has to say. I was really fascinated. He even gave me some good advice after our interview. So I much appreciate that, Gary. But let's have a listen to what Gary had to say about his podcast and traveling the world. Hello there, Rebels. We are in the Atlas room of the Sherpa Chalet. I am with a guy who turns out was really a pleasant surprise doing a little research on him. I found that he does a podcast called Everything Everywhere, which we are going to talk about. But there is a lot more to this guy than from what I saw in a little paragraph. And I went to his website and I really learned a lot about him. And you're going to get to hear all about him. Again, the podcast is named Everything Everywhere. It's not just a podcast. It's a mouthwash. And it's a travel show. And his name is Gary Arndt. How you doing, Gary? Welcome to the show.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. I don't want to do your story a disservice. So if you want to fill in whatever holes you can. Now, you originally owned a web design company.
Yeah, a very early one. So I actually started back in 1994 doing internet stuff. And I had a college roommate that built a very popular product and a very early product for hooking up websites to databases. And at the time, that was very hard to do. This was before Linux. This is before PHP. This is before MySQL. This is before all this stuff. This is before Windows 95. To hook up a database to a website, you needed a copy of Oracle, a Spark workstation. It was really expensive. Just a simple static HTML page was not cheap. And so he created a product that let you hook up a database to a website very easily. And it ran on this new operating system called Windows NT. which allowed you to run it basically on any computer. You could pick like a normal kind of computer. And the product's called Cold Fusion, and today it's actually owned by Adobe. And it's one of their web development tools. And people were coming to him saying that they wanted to have their company's website built with this tool so they could put like an online catalog and things like that on. And he didn't want to actually build the websites. And we were sharing an apartment at the time. So he says, well, Gary, do you want to do it? So I'm like, sure. I wasn't doing anything. So I began doing this, and more people wanted to have websites made, data-driven website. So I hired a friend, and he had a friend. And then fast forward 4 years, I'm 28 years old, and I have a company with 50 employees. And it eventually got sold to a big multinational company before the dot-com bubble burst. 1 year to the day after I sold it, and my non-compete and stuff ran out, I quit. And I started a network of video game websites that was actually really successful up until the point where the dot-com bubble did burst, and the entire kind of ad ecosystem fell apart. I went back to school for a few years, studied geology and geophysics, and then I hatched this idea of traveling around the world for a year. I didn't have any kids, I didn't have a wife, had no job, I had enough in savings. So 2005, I had the idea, but it took me about 18 months to tie up all the loose ends, to sell my house, a bunch of other stuff. And in March 2007, I turned over the keys to my house and started traveling. And I told everyone I'd be gone for about a year. And I thought maybe actually I'd be gone for 2. And I ended up traveling, not owning a home or having a place to live for 9 years. And up until last February, I would say, even though I had an apartment, I was still traveling a third to a half of each year with just like a home base in between.
So originally, when you were a kid growing up in Wisconsin, you didn't really even travel that much.
No, we had a typical middle-class family. We'd occasionally go on road trips in the summer. We went to Niagara Falls once. Once we drove down to New Mexico. That was about it. I never saw saltwater till I was 21 years old. I was at the national debate tournament in college. It was in Bellingham, Washington, and we flew into Seattle. And I remember as our van was going north, we were driving past this park, and I saw the water. And I said, pull over, pull over. And they go, what? What's wrong? And they pulled over, and I ran out, and I went and tasted the water because I just needed to verify for myself that it was in fact salty because I'd never experienced it before.
I think the experiences have gone a little bit bigger than that at that point, though, Gary. Huh?
Yeah.
So where was your very first trip when you left the United States?
My goal was basically to go west. So I rented a car in Minneapolis, drove to Dallas, met one of my friends, took a train from Dallas to LA, which was a horrible experience. Went to Hawaii, learned how to scuba dive, got certified. From there, I went to Tahiti. And the point of going to Tahiti was so I could catch a flight to Easter Island, because there's only 2 places in the world. You can go from Santiago, Chile, or Tahiti. Back to Tahiti, I went to the Cook Islands, went to New Zealand, and then I just sort of bounced around the Pacific. It took me about 9 months to cross the Pacific Ocean. I was going to places like Samoa, Tonga, Fiji, Vanuatu, Solomon Islands, New Caledonia, Micronesia, Palau, things like that. And all this time I had a website. I don't, because I've been working online for so long, having a website was natural. And the difference was a lot of people may go on an around the world trip, but it's primarily to big cities. They'll go to Paris, London, Bangkok, Sydney, places like that. And I was going to really weird places that, no one visits. And for that reason, I started to gain a following online. And it was 9 months in, I was in Hong Kong. And I kind of said to myself that, there weren't a lot of people, on my website, having both my current business where we had a network of video games, we used to do like 50 million page views a month across our network. So it was huge. This was what I was doing with this was not huge at all. So I said to myself, either I should quit doing this and just focus on traveling, or I need to take it seriously and make something of it. And I didn't know what that was because no one at the time was making a living doing this. The term blog was still rather new. So I went to a newsstand in Hong Kong. I bought every travel magazine and I opened up a spreadsheet and I just sort of did an analysis of what is in all these spreadsheets. And one of the things I realized was that it primarily had to do with travel pornography. The things they were writing about and the number of places they were writing about in each issue, no human could do that in 1 month. And they probably weren't even using this for travel planning. It'd be very difficult even to pick one place in 12 issues and go there in a year. So I started to put an emphasis on photography. I bought a camera when I started traveling that was way over my head that I didn't know how to use. And in a space of a few years, I taught myself how to do it. And I was named Travel Photographer of the Year in North America. Ended up doing that 3 times, beating out, National Geographic photographers and established people like that. That's kind of how it got started.
And you've also won awards for your blog as well. I know that it was Time Magazine that ranked yours as one of the best travel blogs.
No, best blogs.
Best
this
blogs.
is in 2010. They used to do an annual review of the top blogs in the world. And in 2010, I got on their list of the top 25, and it was the first travel website ever to get put on it. What was interesting is that I didn't know why I was ever put on the list. And the next year, I was in New York, and I had lunch with the editor from Time who had put together the list. And I asked him why they chose my site. And he said, "Oh, you're from Wisconsin. Oh, I'm from Wisconsin. And my wife reads your site. So that's why I put it on."
That's just simply by location.
Yeah, I mean, that's what goes into those sort of decisions. So I guess it worked for me, but
just for statistics here, I guess we should tell everybody. I mean, as far as your world mileage is concerned, you've been to every state in the United States at least twice. You've been to every province in Canada 3 times. You've been to over 200 states. You've been to every continent.
So there's a list called the Traveler Century Club, and they break the world down to more than just countries because there's a lot of things that aren't countries, like Puerto Rico, Antarctica, French Polynesia. If you say I'm going to France and you go to the Pacific Ocean, technically that is France in the same way that Hawaii is America. But that's not what people are thinking of when you say you're going to France. Right. So they break it. And so they have a list of, I think it's up to 326 different territories around the world, countries and territories. I've been to 204, I think, of those 326.
Is it always flying? Is that your preferred mode of travel? Or have you ever taken?
No, I hate flying. I absolutely loathe it. I hate long flights. If they had regular service via ship from, say, New York to London, I would probably take that every time. They do offer. There's Cunard actually does have that, but it's like once every 2 weeks, and it's more of a production where it's like, oh, you're going on the Titanic or something, and people dress up. I'm just talking about a cheapo Carnival cruise, eating at the buffet. I would do that every time because it's a 3 or 4 day trip. Fine, you don't arrive jet lagged. It's about the same price as flying. You can walk around. You have a proper bed. If you look at the kind of cabin you get, even in a cheap cruise line versus a business class flight, the cabin in a cruise ship is better than what you're going to get in first class on a plane because it's just bigger. You have more space. The food's going to be better. You're going to be able to walk around. Your legs won't get sore. So yeah, I would do that all the time. I understand that some people, are constrained with time and it wouldn't be for them. But for me, yeah, I would, especially, with the new satellite internet things that are now coming online, you're going to have broadband in the middle of the ocean. So why not? Be productive and work for several days.
One thing that struck me as interesting. Now you've been to Antarctica. What is there to see? When do you go? Do you go during the summer months, or I guess during our winter months? Is that?
Yeah. So right now, as we're recording this in January, this would be the time to go to Antarctica because it's summer in Antarctica, but nothing's happening this year, so it's not really a thing. I don't know what the numbers are. Last I heard, it was around 25,000 people a year go to Antarctica, almost all on ship. It is possible to fly there, believe it or not. There are flights out of Chile. I know they fly into a place called Union Glacier. Flying, I understand why people do it because the boat trip over there can be kind of rough. But you're not going to see much because you're landing on a glacier and you're just landing in a place where it's just white everywhere. That's all it is.
Mhm.
Whereas if you take a ship, you're going to be seeing the coast. It's far more interesting. And that's where the animals are. You're going to see the penguins and the whales and all sorts of stuff. The thing I always recommend to people is, I understand the attraction of going to Antarctica and it's great. But what all of the people who work on the ships that go to Antarctica look forward to every season is stopping in South Georgia Island. And that usually only happens a couple times, once or twice a season for most ships. And South Georgia is kind of, usually you start in Ushuaia, Argentina, maybe you'll stop in the Falklands. South Georgia's further out, huge penguin breeding ground, and then you go down to Antarctica. Makes the trip a little longer and more expensive, but well worth it. There's no place on earth quite like South Georgia.
You really have been pretty lucky that you haven't had too many bad things happen to you while I'm traveling. I'm glad about that. Did you have any unusual experiences at any of these countries? I know there was one, they actually denied you entry because of your passport.
It's because the visa, so it's for the nation of Kiribati, which is in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Most people pronounce it Kiribati, but it's actually pronounced Kiribati. There's no S in it, but it's pronounced like an S. And I went and got a visa. It's a very small country. They don't have a lot of embassies. So I had to go to Fiji and do it. And in most countries, when you get a visa, it's like a sticker that they put in your passport. Well, for Kiribati, it was literally a rubber stamp and a ballpoint pen. And on my way there, I got stuck in the rain with all my stuff in the Solomon Islands. And the ballpoint pen ink bled off the page. The pages of passports are actually not really paper. It's more of a, I don't know, kind of a waxy surface. And so when I arrived in Tarawa at the airport, they wouldn't let me in. And I said, look, I got a ticket out in 4 days. I got my hotel reserved. Where am I going to hide? This is a coral atoll. You can't, there's no trees. There's nowhere to. And said, no, I'm not going to let you in. And I'd been in touch with the Minister of Tourism before I arrived to make sure that I did everything properly. So I threw a fit. It was the only time I've ever really done that traveling. The airport manager saw it, said, we're very sorry. We got a flight leaving in 6 hours. This was the flight you were going to be on in 4 days to Fiji. Do you want to get on that? I said, fine. I wrote a very nasty letter to the Minister of Tourism. And he ended up forwarding that email to the Prime Minister. And 3 months later, Americans didn't need a visa to go to Kiribati anymore. So,
wow. All because of a wet visa.
Yeah, I always tell, I know a lot of extreme travel friends. I always tell them, if you go to Kiribati and you're American, you got me to thank for it. So.
Do they have a picture of you when it's welcome to Kiribati? Here's Gary.
I haven't been back since, and I really want to visit both Kiribati and Nauru. Nauru is one of the smallest countries in the world. And I just kind of went through on the way there. I was there for like an hour, got off the plane, but it was in the middle of the night, so I didn't really see anything.
So what kind of advice would you have for people who would do the type of traveling that you've been doing all this time?
Well, if they're already doing it, congrats. It's usually the people that aren't doing it. And I think there's a lot of fear that people have. Whenever I'd go somewhere new, the comments I would always get from people on Facebook, or they'd send me emails. They'd say, oh, be safe. It's dangerous. And I'm like, no, it's not. The reason we think that is because the only thing we hear about a place is when bad things happen on the news.
Right.
So our perception is always negative. And, I ask people, it's like, well, what do you think of Laos? And they don't think anything of it because it's never been in the news. So they don't know what to think. If I say, what do you think of Colombia? What comes to mind? And for most people, the first thing they think of is drug lords and drug trafficking. That was 30 years ago. Okay. That's not a thing there anymore. That's in northern Mexico now. But nothing has replaced that in the popular consciousness. So that's what people still think of Colombia. When I went to Vietnam, everyone is saying, oh, well, what do they think of the Vietnam War? And they asked me that question because it is their only touch point with that country. That's all they know is the Vietnam War. They don't know anything that happened before or after.
Right.
They just know that. Or the Middle East, right? That's a very broad brush. A place like Jordan or Oman, perfectly safe. There's never been any terrorism or anything in those places. They're very nice places to visit. Yet when something happens in the Middle East, people freak out. I remember when there was an Ebola outbreak a couple of years ago in Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone is in Africa. I'm putting that in air quotes.
Okay.
There were people canceling vacations to South Africa because of what was happening in Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone is further from South Africa than it is to London. Africa is a really big continent. And sure, it's in Africa, but that's absurd to be canceling a vacation to South Africa because of something that is happening thousands of miles away in a remote village in Sierra Leone.
Right.
But that's what we think because we just see it on the news. You don't have familiarity with a place, so you paint with a very broad brush when you're far away. If it's something local, let's say you live in New York, and you hear that there's a murder yesterday, people aren't saying, oh, if there was a murder in New York, I got to leave, you know?
Right.
Or a good example is after remember the Boston Marathon bombing a few years ago?
Mm-hmm.
I actually had this friend I always kind of argue with. He lived in Los Angeles. And after that happened, I sent him an email. I said, I heard there was a bombing in America. Are you all right? And he lived in LA. It was in Boston. Now, if you live in the US, that's absurd. They're so far apart from each other.
Right.
But that is the exact sort of thinking people have when they hear about events in other countries and they're not familiar with the country. They hear of some, narco terrorist thing that happens in northern Mexico, and so they cancel a trip to Cancun. Cancun has crime rates like Finland. It's very far away from Mexico. Is actually a really big country. They're far away from each other.
Like you said, people, I guess, generalize and they attach their fear to that generalization, I guess.
Yes. And a lot of it simply has to do with knowledge. And as you travel more, that fear, I remember I went to Papua New Guinea and I posted on my website that Papua New Guinea had just been named the gang rape capital of the world by some magazine. And Port Moresby is not a great city. I'm flat out. I don't think you should spend a lot. There's nothing to see. There's nothing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I got out of there immediately. But everyone was freaking out about, oh, it's so dangerous. Like, no, I went to a completely different island, completely different area, totally safe, just that city. And it's no different than the US. There are some places you just don't go. And we know that. And so we're fine with it. But when it's in another country, we're not.
And through a lot of your travel blogs, I guess people also kind of get the inside scoop on those areas as well.
It's most of the world. I think you're fine in most places. Every day, there are 7 billion people not being murdered all over the world. And yet we think that, if you step foot in, I know people, I have friends who just recently went to Baghdad and they have been to Mogadishu. Now, granted, these are not, high on most people's list of places to travel. And I wouldn't even necessarily recommend it, but it can be done and be done safely. It's just that all we hear are bad things. So most people would never even consider something like that.
Know the area and just be smart about it anyway, just to not even kind of court any trouble. I know sometimes when people go to, where's the area where they cane you?
Oh, Singapore.
Singapore, thank you.
Well, yeah, don't deal drugs.
Right.
Don't vandalize stuff. Don't break the law. And, I every so often read a news story about some tourist who does something stupid. And it's almost like they think that the laws don't apply to them.
Mm-hmm.
They go to some temple in Thailand and they moon the camera and they take pictures and they just don't think it's a big deal and they're breaking a law and they're surprised. Oh my gosh, we're going to go to jail. It's like, yeah, don't do that. Don't deal drugs. Don't break the law. And it's common sense stuff. And I am always shocked when I hear about people doing this. It's like, why are you smuggling drugs into Indonesia? Why? What? It's not worth it.
So, do you have a couple of favorite places that you've been to so far? Well, I mean,
lots of them. Namibia is a fantastic place. It's in Southwest Africa, very sparsely populated, fantastic deserts, great place to visit, easy to get around. They speak English. Not a lot of roads, but the ones they have are fine. Oman is really great. I can't wait to go back there. There are some underrated national parks, even in the United States and Canada. One of my favorite is Nahanni National Park. And I almost bring up Nahanni every interview I do. Nahanni might very well be the greatest national park in the world. And it gets 800 visitors a year. And I'm confident no matter how much I talk it up, no one's ever going to go because it's in the Northwest Territories of Canada. It's not connected to the rest of the world by a road. You have to drive up to a village and then take a float plane in. So it's not easy. But it truly is one of the greatest places on earth. I mean, Lord of the Rings type stuff, one of the biggest waterfalls in the world, amazing mountains and canyons and all sorts of stuff. And almost no one goes there. And I'm just waiting for one day for, to get a call from the park staff there saying, oh, we had 900 people this year. We had a huge spike.
Is there a place that you've yet to go to that's on your bucket list that you haven't crossed off yet?
Oh, there's a lot of places. Just because you've set foot in a country doesn't mean that you've explored the whole country.
Right.
There's a lot of places in the United States I haven't been, even though I've been to every state twice. There's a lot that I still haven't seen. I've been to India. I spent 2 weeks there, but there's a lot of India. It's a big country. I've been to Russia, but quite frankly, it wasn't, that's in a huge country. There's a lot I haven't seen. Same with China. I've barely been into Brazil. I went over the border into Iguazu Falls, so there's a lot there. So yeah, there's a lot of places, a lot of stuff in like Central Africa that I haven't seen. So yeah, I mean, and the more you travel, the more you learn about stuff that you want to see. So the list actually becomes bigger the more you travel, believe it or not. Most people have a very small list of stuff that they know about. Ask most Americans, name a city in France that's not Paris. And they can't. They can't name one. So if they want to go to France, they're going to go to Paris because they don't know about anything else. They literally don't know about anything else in France. But then you go there and you talk to people and you're like, oh, well, that's cool. That palace is there. And then up in the Alps, they got this and and then you start learning about all this stuff. And so, okay, so now your list of stuff is even bigger. Or even, I've been to Rome 3 times. I keep coming up with stuff I want to see in Rome. And it's not the big stuff like the Colosseum, but it's a lot of stuff that you really have to get special permission to go see. Like the place where Julius Caesar was killed is in the basement of a restaurant. It's not in the main forum area. He wasn't killed there because it was under construction at the time. Nero's palace, which was the biggest building in the ancient world, most of it was torn down, but they actually found part of it after World War II buried. And all of the artwork inside has been preserved because it's been buried and untouched for almost 2,000 years. There's a lot of stuff like this that really interesting things that most people don't get to see that you learn about over time. This Roman city that I just learned about a couple of weeks ago in Algeria. And the reason it's so well preserved is because it's in the middle of the desert. And it wasn't built on top of like a lot of the places you see in Europe. So it's still there. The road layout, everything. It's almost like Pompeii, except it wasn't covered by a volcano. It was just ignored because it was in the middle of a desert.
Talk a little bit about Everything Everywhere. You're one of your 3 podcasts, actually.
This year has not been good for travel, to put it mildly. I came home from Portugal on February 28th of 2020. I actually think I had COVID. I had the real bad flu for like a week. But at the time, everyone was still like, oh, China, that's where everything was happening. Mm-hmm. So I didn't really think about it. And then in hindsight, I realized I probably had it. But by then, there weren't a lot of tests at that time either. So they were saving it for like, hospital workers. And I got better. So I felt, well, there wasn't a point. But I thought in March, well, this is all going to be done maybe by, late April. This is going to blow through and kind of be done. No. In fact, I was talking to some people in China that I knew about maybe coming out to China in May, because they're going to need to get their tourism industry back up. Oh, how wrong I was. And then I was starting to plan, maybe I was going to run a tour of the national parks in the Southwest, maybe in October. No, that didn't happen either. And so it was kind of around May that I realized that this was really going to be a long-term thing. 95% of my income disappeared. All the projects I had going on with tourism boards and travel brands, gone. They weren't spending money on that stuff. They had nothing to promote. They had to focus on survival, paying their employees. Most of these places furloughed most of their employees. It's not even like airlines and hotels, which at least had some flights and some rooms. If you're a tour company, you literally went to zero revenue. And I kind of had to realize, because even if people can start traveling again tomorrow, it's not like everything's going to go back tomorrow. It's going to take a year or two for many of these companies to get back on their feet, for things to economically get back to where they were. And I realized I had to do something because I couldn't rely on stuff just going back to normal. And I had this idea that I'd been planning for about 2 years of doing a podcast. And it wasn't going to be a travel show per se, but related to travel. The first show I was going to do was answering the question, why is the Mona Lisa the most popular painting in the world? I read a statistic from the Louvre saying that 25% of the people that visit the Louvre go to see the Mona Lisa and leave. Why is a painting of a woman who was not royalty, not a religious figure, the most famous painting? So I began to do research on it. And the more notes I accumulated, this was turning into be like a 2-hour show. And I did the economics of running a podcast that long, and I realized this probably wasn't going to work. It'd be very difficult with that level of research to do a show even once a week, probably end up being like once every other week. So I abandoned the idea. But then I went back to it in June, and I thought, well, maybe I'll do exactly the opposite. Instead of doing this long form, what if I did short form stuff every day and just told interesting stories about all sorts of neat crap, right? Why does the McRib only appear so often? I ended up doing one about the Mona Lisa, the election of 1824. And so I launched it on July 1st, and it's been growing at a pretty good clip. And the feedback I've had is very successful, and people like the short form. One of my friends drives his daughter to school, and it's short enough where they can listen to it on the way there, even though it's only like a 10-minute ride. And her daughter's in 2nd grade and loves it because they learn something new all the time. It's a lot of work because I have to literally research and write a script every single day, but it's a format that most people don't do. And so it's been pretty successful so far.
I was listening to the story about New York City where the tenants the lease is up on the same day. They all have to move.
Yeah, I'd never heard about that when I came across it. I have this list that I keep. It's just an evolving list where I throw stuff on it. And when I need to think of a show, I'll just go to the list. And the list is almost 250 different show topics at this point. And so I did Moving Day. And I think most people who live in New York aren't aware that Moving Day was a thing for so long. It was like for 200 years. This was the tradition in New York that all the leases would come due on May 1st. And it wasn't until World War II that this stopped. And people even hated it while they were doing it because it was so dumb. At its peak, 1 million people would move on the same day in New York. And that's crazy.
How long ago was this, Gary?
It ended in World War II.
Yeah.
So in the beginning of the 20th century, they were still doing it. It eventually kind of dissolved a little bit. People would kind of do it throughout the week where it would be, a couple days around May 1st. And then some people started to change their leases for October 1st. But it really fell apart at World War II when they simply didn't have enough men because they had all been drafted. And there wasn't enough people to move everything. So things then got staggered throughout the year and Moving Day went away.
Hey, there's a whole bunch of interesting stories on Gary's podcast, by the way. So it's definitely worth checking out. Are you still doing the travel podcasts as well? Or are you kind of putting that on hold until you're back and going wherever you got to go?
Yeah, This Week in Travel has turned into Every Other Month in Travel. Or as we like to say, it's This Week in Travel, not Every Week in Travel. There just isn't much to talk about. We've done several shows last year, and every show just ends up talking about COVID. And it kind of gets boring after a while, right? Because so many people have made so many predictions. I've made several. They were all wrong. And now it's like, oh, we were rolling out vaccines. Great. And then as we're doing that in the UK and South Africa, now they're saying there's new strains that may or may not be effective with these vaccines. So who knows what's going to happen? And people ask me, oh, where are you going next? When you can travel again. I'm like, I've planned nothing. I'm not even going to try to plan anything. I know I have a real popular Facebook group for travel that has several, thousands of people in it. And I think the consensus is the earliest people are picking for stuff at this point is like the fall of 2021. And some people even waiting till 2022. And that's a problem because, if you do make a trip somewhere, especially internationally, that's going to probably cost a couple $1,000s. And you're going to want to make sure that you can cancel it and that you can get a refund. You don't even know if a lot of these companies are going to be in business. And that's the other thing. So it's very difficult to make plans when you just don't know. And it's changing all the time. A lot of countries have just went back on lockdown and have stopped flights. Israel just stopped flights coming in and out. I think we just announced that we're stopping flights from South Africa. So yeah, until this happens, you can't really plan anything. So, and right now I'm just focused on the daily show. That's, kind of where I'm putting all my energy. And it's like I said, it's not a travel show, but it's close enough where I can do travel things. I did a promotion with the Spanish Tourism Board. And so we did a series of episodes where it was just something about Spain, just to keep people thinking about Spain and to learn about the cool things that are there. So if and when they can travel, that's something they can do.
What podcasts do you like to listen to when you're not doing your own?
A lot of history podcasts. Those tend to be my favorite ones. I don't listen to a lot of interview shows, but it really depends on who's being interviewed. Like I used to listen to some of the Joe Rogan episodes, but only on YouTube, but not anymore because they kind of removed it. But I would never listen to the interviews with like comedians or actors or celebrities. I'd always listen to the ones that are like some author of a book or someone who actually has an opinion coming on and talking about it. I always try to, if I'm going to spend my time on something, I want to spend my time learning something. Mm-hmm. So there's a bunch of history podcasts, some very good ones out there that have been going on for the better part of a decade at this point. And if you listen to the entire series, you're going to get something very close to like taking a college course in that subject. So those are the ones I kind of tend to gravitate to now.
Were there any particular history ones?
Yeah, The Life of Caesar is one with Ray Harris and Cameron Riley. That's a really good one. The Revolutions podcast, of course, with Mike Duncan. He did the Great History of Rome several years ago. Tides of History, History of Byzantium, the History of the United States podcast that doesn't get updated that much. The Renaissance Times, kind of looking through my list here. And there's a couple shows about podcasting as well. I've been pretty aggressively marketing my podcast. It's only 6 months old, and I've learned a lot in 6 months. I've grown a lot of social media platforms up to like 6-figure audiences, and I'm applying a lot of that to podcasting. But podcasting is different. There's no algorithm that you can game. You kind of have to do it the old-fashioned way. You kind of just have to grind it out and do stuff like this. Do interviews on other shows. The people can discover who you are, and then they'll say, "I hate this guy. I like this guy," and maybe they'll tune in.
And we do have a portion of the program, and we call it shameless self-promotion.
Shameless self-promotion. Shameless self-promotion.
And this is where you can let our listeners know where they can follow you. And I know your website, Everything Everywhere, is just amazing. I want to recommend that before you even do, because there's some interesting stories there and some fantastic photography as well. So if you got anything else, though, Gary, you can...
Yeah, the big thing is the podcast. Just search for Everything Everywhere Daily, wherever you listen to podcasts, wherever you're listening to this podcast. Check it out. Check out a couple episodes. They're pretty short, available every day. And it's enough that you can easily squeeze it in. It's not a very big commitment. And the goal is every day you'll learn something brand new.
There you have it. Gary Arndt, host of Everything Everywhere Daily. Thank you so much for coming on by.
Thank you for having me.
Be a rebel. Follow the show at Sherpalution on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
And now it's time for Sherpa Suggestions.
Okay, since we've got this little pesky pandemic going on, I guess it's hard to recommend travel podcasts because not too many people are doing a lot of traveling right now. But since Gary is an award-winning blogger, I figured I'd recommend some blogging podcasts. And we have the Market Your Message Show, the Smart Passive Income Online Business and Blogging Podcast. Oh, that's a mouthful. The Just Keep Blogging Podcast, the Blogging Millionaire, the Food Blogger Pro Podcast, the Market Your Message Show, and finally, I Teach Blogging. Ready, set, blog! Well, Rebels, that will do it for this week for Too Many Podcasts. Make sure you tune in next week, and we will be doing 2 episodes next week, actually. The first will be my conversation with a lady named Dr. Andrea Wojnicki, and she hosts a podcast called Talk About Talk, and it's about improving business communication. And I had such a great time speaking with her. I think you're really going to enjoy this show. I say that all the time. Please come and listen. You're going to enjoy it. There, I forced you to listen now. And also, we will be doing another show, and it is my interview with David Ogman. And David is the father of a young boy named Jordan who is suffering from a rare genetic disease, and they're looking to raise money to help fund research into finding a hopeful cure for him. It's a really different type of episode, different kind of interview. David was a wonderful guest. You're going to really be moved when you hear this conversation, and I'm planning on sharing the information on the charity, so please share that podcast and share that information on social media. Let all your friends know, and let's see what we can do to help this little guy. Until next time, I guess we will head on out of here because I'm going to be busy putting together podcasts. All right, Mr. Bruce, I don't think I'm going to need a suitcase for this one, but why don't you write a blog about me preparing a podcast? No? Okay, well, but we just throw paper at each other for the next 20 minutes. Yeah, that works. Okay, see you, everybody. Viva la Sherpalution.
Thanks for listening to Too Many Podcasts. Please disperse. You can go home now. I said you can go home now. Viva la Sherpalution. Viva la Sherpalution. Oh. Yell, come back now, you hear?